The best pitcher from every decade in MLB history. The 1910s. The 1910s were brutal for pitchers, like working overtime every day at McDonald's with no days off and a busted lunch break. Starters were expected to finish games even if their arm was about to fall off. Gloves were basically cardboard, which meant a ton of errors, and hitters slapped the ball around forever, refusing to get out. Walter Johnson didn't get the memo though, because he pulled up and made the decade his personal highlight reel. The madman threw harder than anyone alive. There's even swearing his fastball rose upwards like it was glitching through the air. From 1910 to 1919, Johnson led the league in strikeouts 7 times and ERA 5 times while throwing over 300 innings in 6 different seasons. In 1912 alone, he struck out 303 hitters when most pitchers barely cracked 100. He also won 20 more games 5 times in the decade, all while barely walking anyone. Other great arms like Christy Mathewson and Eddie Plank were legit, but Johnson separated himself completely. He bullied the entire era, and then some, turning the dead ball era into survival baseball for the hitters instead of the pitchers. The 1920s. The 1920s flipped baseball on its head, and pitchers started getting smacked around like it was batting practice. Babe Ruth was slamming homers, beers, and your mom like it was his job. And because of that, most pitchers got completely fried. That is except for Grover Cleveland Alexander. He didn't throw gas, he didn't throw a nasty curve, but his control was, well, out of control. It was so good. From 1920 to 1929, Alexander led the league in wins 4 times and logged over 250 innings in 7 different seasons. Even as offense exploded. In 1920, when hitters were going wild, he still posted a 1.91 ERA, which feels illegal for the era. He relied on movement, location, and reading swings like spoilers. Hitters knew what was coming and still rolled over it. While flashier arms came and went, Alexander stayed reliable every single year. In a decade built on power, he proved brains and durability still ruled, and that steady dominance gave the 1920s its pitching backbone. The 1930s. The 1930s were a hitter's paradise. Batting averages exploded with hitters like Jimmy Fox and Hank Greenberg terrorizing everyone. Most arms were just trying to survive, but not Lefty Grove. From 1930 to 1939, Grove led the league in ERA 7 times, strikeouts 7 times, and wins 4 times, basically dominating as a pitcher in one of the biggest offensive booms in MLB history. In 1931, he went 31-4 with a 2.06 ERA. Let me say that again. He went 31-4 with a 2.06 ERA. These days, you're lucky to get an ace that even crosses 18. While others melted down, Grove stayed locked in, mowing through lineups like he hated the decade personally. He didn't just survive offense, he embarrassed them. And that contrast turned his run into untouchable pitching lore. The 1940s. The 1940s were messy and weird. With war pulling stars away and rosters changing overnight, talent all of a sudden disappeared. Players like Ted Williams, who were previously a pitcher's worst nightmare, were instead chucking grenades into bunkers overseas. But Hal Newhouser didn't care, because he stayed and bullied what was left of the league. From 1944 to 1946, Newhouser won back-to-back MVPs and led the league in ERA 3 straight times, which almost never happens for pitchers. In 1945, he went 25-9 with a 1.81 ERA and 212 strikeouts. Numbers that jumped off the page even then. He worked deep into games, attacked hitters, and never let weakened lineups breathe. Critics talk competition, but separation still matters. Newhouser was clearly better than everyone standing near him. In a decade full of instability, his dominance felt grounding, and that reliability turned him into the pitching backbone of the 1940s. The 1950s. The 1950s were packed with stars and legends everywhere you look. Mickey Mantle and Willie Mays were smacking balls into orbit every night off of all normal pitchers. But the 1950s legend Warren Spahn was no normal pitcher. He didn't blow guys away, but his stuff was electric nonetheless. From 1950 to 1959, Spahn won over 200 games in the decade alone, including 4 seasons with at least 20 wins. He led the league in wins 4 times and stayed elite well into his late 30s, which was unheard of. Hitters knew they were in for a long night because he worked fast, speeds, and never gave in. Other pitchers burned bright and faded, but Spahn stayed reliable like your favorite old truck. That steady dominance turned consistency into unmatched aura. By the middle of the decade, he was the standard every rotation wanted but could not clone. The 1960s. The 1960s were a nightmare for hitters and a playground for elite arms, a complete flip-flop from some of the earlier MLB decades. Pitchers like Bob Gibson and Juan Marichal practically growled on the mound to intimidate their competition. But the greatest pitcher of the decade, and maybe ever, didn't need intimidation to succeed because he was just that damn good. From 1961 to 1966, Sandy Koufax went nuclear, winning 3 Cy Youngs, throwing 4 no-hitters, and posting ERAs that looked glitched. In 1963, he struck out 306 hitters, then followed with 382 strikeouts in 1965, which stands as the 9th highest K total of all time. If you take a deeper look though, and remove players from the 1800s before baseball even knew what it was, Koufax had the 2nd highest strikeout total for a season in MLB history. Even with a short career, his peak was so insane it erased everyone else. When his arm gave out early, the damage was already done. He was the greatest pitcher the 60s and likely baseball had ever seen. The 1970s. The 1970s were stacked with monster arms, and every night felt like a heavyweight fight on the mound. Nolan Ryan threw gas that scared people. Steve Carlton locked insane workloads, and Catfish Hunter racked up wins on loaded teams. But Tom Seaver was the dude who had everything working at once. From 1970 to 1979, Seaver won 3 Cy Youngs, led the league in ERA 3 times, and cleared 250 innings 4 different seasons while barely breaking a sweat. In 1971, he posted a 1.76 ERA, which is still stupid. And he struck out over 200 hitters 5 times in the decade. After the Mets put up one of the worst seasons in MLB history with 120 losses in 1962, Seaver basically brought the team into relevance. He didn't rely on one crazy year either. He stacked elite seasons calmly like clockwork, and that is why his Mets tenure is thought of as the purest of godly pitching lore. The 1980s. The 1980s were loud, angry, and full of big personalities, and pitching split between finesse artists and absolute flamethrowers. Dwight Gooden peaked like a rocket, Brett Saberhagen carved hitters up, and Oral Hershiser went on a heater that felt unreal. But Roger Clemens was the constant problem nobody had a solution for. From 1986 to 1989, Clemens won 3 Cy Youngs, struck out over 250 hitters twice, beat lineups, he bullied them. Pitching like every start was personal. While others burned hot and cooled fast, Clemens stayed elite year after year, stacking dominance without mercy. The decade belonged to power pitching, and Clemens set the tone, turning aggression into the blueprint and leaving behind aura, fear, and a standard nobody else could fully match, or maybe ever will. The 1990s. The 1990s were loud, messy, and full of steroids, and pitchers were supposed to just hang on and pray while Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire pounded them with their arm cannons. Power hitters were jacked, strike zones were tight, and mistakes got sent to the parking lot or even farther. That is why it's completely insane that the greatest pitcher of the decade was not a roided out Chapman imitation or a 300-pound flamethrower, but instead the most intelligent finesse artist the league had ever seen. From 1992 to 1995, Maddox won 4 straight Cy Youngs, posting ERAs of 2.18, 1.56, 1.63, and 1.63, which still looks fake today. In 1995, he walked only 23 batters in 209 innings, and is rumored that you'd have a better chance winning the lottery than getting a 3-0 count on Maddox. Hitters said it felt like he knew what they were swinging at before they did. While Randy Johnson scared people and Pedro dazzled late, Maddox owned the whole decade by never missing spots. He turned pitching into chess, while everyone else was playing checkers. The 2000s. The 2000s cranked everything up to an 11. Bigger hitters, louder swings, and pitchers throwing harder than ever before. Many cracked, but Randy Johnson did not. He stood 6'10", threw from the clouds, and made hitters look like they brought pool noodles to a sword fight. From 2000 to 2004, Johnson won 4 Cy Youngs in 5 years and struck out over 300 batters 5 times in the decade. In 2001, he struck out 372 hitters and then turned the playoffs into a horror movie, going 5-1 with a 1.52 ERA and a co-World Series MVP. His fastball exploded, and his slider made grown men cry, often leading to hitters walking back to the dugout just shaking their heads. While guys like Johan Santana and Roy Halladay were elite, nobody felt more unhittable when it mattered than the big unit. The 2010s. The 2010s were all about efficiency, spin, and nerd stats, and pitchers either adapted or got cooked fast. Velocity climbed, analytics took over, and mistakes got punished instantly. And with one of the filthiest curveballs the league had ever seen, Clayton Kershaw stayed far ahead of all of it. While other aces flashed hot stretches, Kershaw just lived in dominance year after year. From 2010 to 2019, he posted a 2.10 ERA for the entire decade, which is insane, and won 3 Cy Youngs plus an MVP as a pitcher, something that barely ever happens. Between 2011 and 2017, hitters practically looked helpless, batting under 200 against him while chasing a curveball that fell off the table like a cartoon. He led the league in ERA 5 times, strikeouts 3 times, and whip constantly. No wasted pitches, no panic, just clean work. The decade was about control and consistency, and Kershaw turned both into an unbeatable concoction that few have even come close to touching. The 2020s. The 2020s blurred everything together. Velocity went wild, pitch shapes got weird, and arms started cracking faster than phones without cases. Health became the biggest stat to look out for. And while the greatest pitcher of the 2020s hasn't been immune to injury, Jacob deGrom is the de facto choice for the most dominant hurler of the decade. From 2020 to 2023, deGrom posted ERAs under 2, struck out hitters at video game rates, and averaged triple-digit fastballs like it was nothing. In 2021, he had a 1.08 ERA through June, and even hit home runs while pitching, which is just disrespectful. While Garrett Cole brought durability and Corbin Burns unlocked nasty movement, nobody has touched deGrom's peak 2020 dominance yet. When deGrom was on the mound, the game tilted instantly, and that is a type of aura that only he has carried of late. If you like this video, YouTube thinks you're really gonna love this next one on screen, so give it a click and check it out.